Welcome back to Real Family Secrets. Grab your snacks, get comfortable. The people in these stories had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. You're going to love it here. My name is Thomas Reeves, and I raised a boy who wasn't biologically mine for 15 years. I want to say that up front, plainly, because everything that happened at his high school graduation only makes sense if you understand one thing first. To me, Caleb was never not my son. He just was my son, full stop. I met his mother, Diane, when Caleb was 3 years old. His biological father had left before Caleb could walk, disappeared into a life that didn't include either of them. And by the time I came along, Diane had built a small, careful life just for the two of them. I didn't try to replace anyone. There was no one to replace. I just showed up, and I stayed. I legally adopted Caleb when he was 6. Diane cried that day, harder than she cried at our wedding, if I'm honest. "He has your last name now," she kept saying, like she couldn't quite believe it was real. For 15 years, Caleb's biological father, a man named Grant Dunlap, was a ghost. No calls, no cards, no child support that anyone bothered chasing because nobody expected to see $1 of it. And then, 3 weeks before Caleb's high school graduation, my phone rang, and a lawyer I'd never heard of introduced himself and asked if I had time to talk about a matter concerning your son's biological father's estate. It turned out Grant Dunlap's own father, Caleb's biological grandfather, had died the previous year and left behind a trust worth just under $2 million. The trust named any biological grandchildren of Grant Dunlap as beneficiaries. Grant apparently had suddenly remembered he had a son, 15 years of silence, and now a lawyer with a folder full of custody-adjacent paperwork. Grant requested a paternity confirmation hearing, a formality since paternity had never been disputed, but buried inside the filing was something else. A request for partial legal standing in decisions about Caleb, since Caleb was still, technically, 17 for another 6 weeks. "He's not trying to parent him," my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Patricia Wu, told me over the phone. "He's trying to establish enough legal presence to argue he should control how the trust money is distributed and managed until Caleb turns 25. If he's Caleb's legal guardian of record, even partially, for even 6 weeks, he gets leverage over $2 million. He abandoned him," I said. 15 years, not one birthday card. "I know," Patricia said, "and normally that would sink him immediately. But there's a complication, Thomas, and I need you to hear it from me before you hear it from anyone else." "What complication?" "Diane knew Grant tried to reach out. Twice, once when Caleb was 9, once when he was 12. She never told you. She never told Caleb. She handled both letters herself and never mentioned them to either of you." I sat with that for a long moment. 15 years of marriage, and there was a version of my son's story I apparently didn't know. I want to be honest with you about what I felt in that moment, because it wasn't rage, not exactly. It was something closer to vertigo, the specific dizziness of realizing the ground you've been standing on has a trap door you never knew about. I didn't confront Diane immediately. I've learnt, the hard way, that the first conversation after news like that is never the right one. You need to actually understand what happened before you react to it. So I asked to see the letters. Diane, to her credit, didn't fight me on it. She went upstairs and came back down with a small metal box I'd never seen before, and inside it were 2 letters from Grant Dunlap, dated 6 years apart. The first one, when Caleb was 9, was 3 sentences long. "I think about him. I know I have no right to ask anything. If there's ever a time he wants to know me, I'd like that." The second, when Caleb was 12, was longer, an apology mostly. An admission that he'd been in and out of substance abuse treatment, that he wasn't in a place to be anyone's father, but that he wanted Caleb to know he existed and he cared, even from a distance. I read both letters twice. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked her, and my voice came out quieter than I expected. "Because you were his father," Diane said, tears already sliding down her face. "The real one, the one who showed up every single day." I was scared that if Caleb knew Grant was reaching out, even a little, it would confuse something that wasn't confused. I thought I was protecting both of you. I think now that I was protecting myself from something I didn't want to deal with. I understood the impulse, even as it stung, but understanding it didn't make the deeper problem disappear, because now those hidden letters were about to become Exhibit A in a courtroom, proof that Grant had, in fact, made attempts at contact that Diane had unilaterally blocked, which complicated the abandonment argument significantly. The hearing was scheduled for the Tuesday after graduation, which meant Caleb would walk across that stage, still not knowing any of this. Patricia and I debated telling him beforehand. In the end, I decided he deserved to hear it from me, not from a lawyer, and not for the first time in a courtroom. I told him 2 nights before graduation, sitting on the back porch, the same porch where I'd taught him to throw a baseball when he was 7. "There's something about your biological father you need to know," I started, and I watched my son's face go through about 6 emotions in the space of a single sentence. "Is this about the letters Mum told me about last year?" he asked. I froze. "Diane told you?" "Last year, after the second one came, she showed me both of them. She said she didn't want to keep secrets from me, even if she wasn't sure what to do with them." Something in my chest that had been clenched for 3 weeks finally loosened. Diane had told Caleb after all, just not me. 15 years of marriage, and we'd both apparently been keeping the same secret from each other, in opposite directions. "What did you think?" I asked him. "I thought he sounded sad," Caleb said. "But I also thought, you're my dad. The letters didn't change that. I didn't need to bring it up, because it didn't feel like it needed fixing." I sat on that porch and looked at my son, legally mine, biologically not, entirely mine in every way that mattered, and felt something I can only describe as a very specific, very quiet kind of pride. The hearing happened on schedule. Grant Dunlap showed up in a suit that looked borrowed, with a lawyer who talked more about biological rights than anything resembling actual relationship history. Patricia laid out the timeline plainly. 2 letters in 15 years, no financial support, no requested visitation until a trust fund entered the picture. Grant's lawyer tried to argue that Diane's interception of the letters constituted obstruction of a developing paternal relationship. Then the judge asked to hear directly from Caleb, who was by then 18, an adult, with full legal standing to speak for himself in the matter. Caleb stood up in that courtroom, in the same suit he'd worn to graduation 2 days earlier, and said something I'll remember for the rest of my life. "I got 2 letters in 15 years, he said. "I read both of them. I don't hate him for writing them, and I don't feel like I need anything from him now. I have a father. He adopted me when I was 6 because he wanted to, not because anyone made him. I don't need a second one, and I definitely don't need one who only remembered I existed after a $2 million trust fund did." The judge ruled quickly after that. Grant's petition for standing was denied. The trust would go directly to Caleb at 18, with no guardianship complications, no strings attached from a man who'd shown up 15 years late. Grant approached us outside the courthouse, and for 1 second I thought he might say something ugly. Instead, he just looked at Caleb and said, quietly, "For what it's worth, I am sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything." Caleb nodded once. "I know," he said. "Take care of yourself." And that was the end of it. No dramatic confrontation, just a door closing, gently but completely. Diane and I talked for a long time that night, about secrets, about the different shapes protection can take, about how we'd both been trying to shield the same person without telling each other we were doing it. We should have just talked to each other, she said. We should have talked to each other about a lot of things over 15 years, I said. But somehow we still ended up with a pretty great kid, so I think we did something right. Caleb starts college in the fall. Engineering, on a scholarship he earned entirely on his own, trust fund notwithstanding. He still calls me every Sunday, still calls me Dad, the same way he has since he was 6 years old, the same way he will, I suspect, for the rest of both our lives. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real family stories and tell us in the comments, would you have told your son sooner?
Echoes pulse against the wall, no answer, no answer. Soft footsteps cross the quiet floor. A shadow stops beside the window. I trace your name in condensation. Glass vibrates with silent warnings. Lipsticks yesterday's arguments. Still searching for familiar meaning. Questions I pocket but never ask. Paper folded, words unread. Brief shortens and late hours hush. If you're reaching, I'm somewhere close. Mistakes painted onto morning skin. Regrets dissolve into bitter coffee. We're waiting for something different to begin. Unspoken, half-lit, unfinished story. You were impatient like perfume. Careful not to break routine. I try to read your subtle clues, but the message slips between my shoes. Unbroken patterns, heavy eyelids. I learn your silences, teach my own. Underneath the honest rhythm, I found reasons to postpone. Maps drawn in kitchen lamplight. Promises crumpled by restless hands. Tonight we hold our hope too tight, swaying gently as the distance expands. If one word could reopen the door, would you say it or stay silent? Some answers live within the pause. Some questions need the quiet.